Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm really glad you're here. If you enjoy fun content and cool videos, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Let's jump right in.
To start, I'm a pretty jumpy person when home alone. I often ask my mum to sleep with me if I'm feeling scared that night. And there are many creepy things I can't handle. One night, my family, parents and brother went out to get dinner at a barbecue place. I was going to go. But that night I wasn't feeling up to eating ribs, so I passed. It was about 11 o'clock at night when my dog started to act up. I was sitting on the family computer browsing Reddit when she ran to the window behind me and started growling and barking. Keep in mind, I live in a ranch house and this window faces my front patio. At first I blew it off because she is very protective and will often run to the front door and bark when someone walks by on the sidewalk. But she didn't stop. I scolded her and she laid back down at my feet. And not until around midnight, when I began to stir and shut down the computer, did she start again. Usually she stays close by if my mum isn't in the house, but she was practically underfoot while I walked through my dining room, then kitchen and then living room, turning off the lights. I stooped down to look at her to see what was wrong, and as soon as I put my hands around her face, she freaked out and ran towards the back patio door behind me. By now, I'm getting really creeped out because she will get excited if there is a rabbit in the backyard. But she was not excited now. She was in full-on pack protection mode. Her teeth were bared and her fur was standing up, and she was growling and barking at the glass back patio door. The shades are always halfway pulled on these tall windows, so she won't tear them when she gets excited. But for some reason they were pulled up completely. I got behind her to calm her and peered out, but there was nothing. It was an unusually dark night for New Mexico, where the moon usually casts a shadow. Tonight there was no moon, and the stars were covered by clouds. ... I stood up and began to close all of the blinds in the living area of my house, beginning to freak out but trying to stay calm as to not freak Ginger out. By now it's about 1:15 midnight, and my family should be heading home soon. As I was walking into the bedroom wing of the house, Ginger started trotting close to my heels again. I closed the blinds, shut off my brother's lamp, and began to walk out of his room when she started growling, ... But it wasn't a normal growl. From her chest was a new, guttural, wild growl that I had never heard from her. I couldn't see her front half as it was in the dark bedroom, but the light from the hallway illuminated her backside and her tail was tucked down between her legs. Naturally, I got the hell out of that room and she followed me as I ran, and I slammed the door shut behind me, skipping my parents' bedroom because their door was already shut. I decided to run out to my car in my garage to get some stuff my boyfriend had bought for me days ago. I drive a small yellow Mercedes, and he was concerned I wasn't safe, so he bought me a small knife that looked like a key, pepper spray, and this totally ridiculous 10 hunting knife. It was more of a joke when he bought it, but now I really wanted it. I crept slowly through my dark house to the opposite end towards my garage, and Ginger stayed silent but cautious. I checked back and front doors, and all deadbolts were locked. I began to feel more reassured, and convinced myself that Ginger had probably saw a jogger in front people. Jog at night because it's super hot in the desert during the day, and my neighborhood is the safest in the city, and maybe a rabbit or prairie dog in the backyard, and had since been feeding off my uneasiness and scaring herself. As I passed through the door to the laundry room that has a front-facing window the same as the one in our computer room, I froze. The light from a street lamp across the way cast a shadow on the linoleum floor, and through the slats of the blinds I could see a figure. My heart was pounding, and Ginger was frozen with me, though I'm sure she didn't know why. By this time, I'm kicking myself for not bringing in that damn knife before. I stand staring at the shadow for a good minute or two, listening to my heartbeat and breathing take over all other ambient noise. I'm not sure if the figure is waiting for me, or looking for me, or is even a figure at all. I had never seen the light from this window cast onto the floor before, because the laundry room is usually closed at night, to keep my dog from eating cat poop, and tried to convince myself it was just the silhouette of one of our pillars to the front patio, ... It hadn't moved at all, so I slowly, silently stepped backwards. Luckily, Ginger backed up, too, ... and fucking started tearing the computer room window a new asshole like there was someone directly outside it. I jerked into panic mode and made a break for the sink room of my bathroom, the only room in my house that doesn't have a window. Weird bathroom. I'll explain later and maybe put up a photo. Ginger followed me and I locked both doors to the room. I turned on the light after and sank down in front of the sinks, so I wouldn't have to stare at myself in the mirror. I phoned my mum, who didn't answer, and then called my dad's phone, which my mum picked up. She heard the panic in my voice, and when I told her, I thought there was someone trying to get to me outside of the house. She became serious and told Phil, my dad, to hurry. They were on I-40 and would be home in 10 minutes, she said, and to just stay calm. After that, I called my boyfriend to tell him what was wrong, and he understandably freaked out. This is the guy that bought me a hunting knife to keep in my I stayed calm in this room with my dog, who randomly chilled out and started licking me until my mum texted me and said to stay exactly where I was while Daddy went around the house to check. I found out later that my mum and brother stayed in the truck, which we park on the street. I heard my front door unlock, which scared the shit out of me, but it was my family, so I came out. They seemed unusually pale, but assured me everything was fine and my dad didn't find anything and everything would be okay, blah blah blah. My mum and my dog slept with me in my room that night. Early in the morning, my mum woke me up to make breakfast, and she told me that they actually did see someone, but kept quiet as to not scare my little brother. When my dad got out of the truck to check, a figure that looked like a man ran from the bushes beneath my bedroom window, which is also on the front of the house. Fuck me, and around the back. My dad chased him, but lost him in the dark prairie behind my house. We haven't had a problem with an intruder since, but I always sleep with my window locked, blinds pulled, and curtains drawn just in case someone wants to watch me sleep. Edit. Just now, my dog started barking and growling at the window next to our front door, so I turned on the patio light and let her out to pee, scare away any potential creepers. My mom asked me if my bedroom blinds were closed. It started with a post dash. It bright yellow, stuck to the inside of the fridge. I found it when I came home from work. It said, "You forgot the milk." I thought maybe I wrote it and forgot. I'd had a rough week, late nights, deadlines, not much sleep. It happens. But the next night, I found another one. Please don't lock the hatch. It gets cold up here. I live in a one-bedroom house. No roommates. No tenants. No reason anyone should be using the attic. I checked the hatch in the hallway ceiling. Locked. Just like I left it. I even climbed up there with a flashlight. It was empty, but when I came back down, there was a new note on my coffee table. Thank you. I called the police. They searched the house. Said there were no signs of forced entry, no hidden cameras, nothing out of place. They left. I didn't sleep. Around 3 a.m. I heard something thump above me, a slow, dragging sound, like someone shifting their weight in the attic crawl space. I stood in the hallway, staring up at the hatch, holding a knife in one hand and my breath in the other. Nothing happened. In the morning, I found a note stuck to my bathroom. "Mirror, I like watching you sleep." The handwriting was different this time, sharper, like it had been carved into the paper. I stayed in a motel that night. When I came back the next day, the house was just how I left it, quiet, empty, until I opened the bedroom closet. There was a new note hanging on a coat hanger. "Why did you leave? I'm sleeping with the lights on now. Every drawer and cabinet stays open. I check every corner, every shadow. I haven't gone back into the attic. I won't, but I can hear him up there, dragging something heavy, laughing when I cry. Tonight, I found the worst note yet, folded under my pillow. I've been trying on your skin. It fits. I didn't sleep after that." I burned the note, scrubbed the pillow, left every light in the house on, and kept the knife beside me in bed. But it didn't matter. At 3:09 a.m., I heard it again, the creak of the attic hatch. This time it opened. I didn't go check. I couldn't move. I just stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, barely breathing, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did, not until the next morning, when I found footprints on the hallway floor, bare feet, trailing from the attic hatch to the side of my bed, and back again. The dust made them clear. Each one pointed forward, except for one, the one beside me. It was turned sideways, like he'd been standing there, watching, waiting. I left the house and went straight to the police again. They searched everything again, said there were no signs of entry, no signs of anyone, but I know better now. He doesn't need a door, he's already inside. That night, I stayed in a hotel 3 towns over, a place with bolt locks and security cameras and 0 attic access. When I woke up, I found a note on my nightstand, folded neatly. "Running is rude. You invited me, remember?" I didn't, at least, I don't think I did. But something in me feels like I might have, like there's a blank space in my memory shaped like him. The next few days, I stayed with friends, told them my place was being fumigated. I didn't want to drag them into this, whatever this is, but it didn't stop. New notes kept showing up, one tucked into my jacket pocket. "Your friends smell like plastic." One under my plate at dinner. "You chew wrong." And then one scrawled across my rearview mirror in grease. "I'm going to be better at being you than you ever were." I don't think he wants to haunt me anymore. I think he wants to replace me. I went back to the house today. I had to see it again. I don't know why. Maybe to prove to myself I still existed there, that it's still mine. The lights were already on when I arrived. The attic hatch was open. I crept into the hallway. Every photo on the wall had been replaced. My face was still in them, but my eyes were wrong. Too big, too dark. Smiling when I wasn't. I ran to the bedroom. There was something waiting for me in the mirror. Me, but not quite. His face was mine, but his skin was smoother, cleaner, a little too tight. And he smiled like someone who didn't learn it from people. He waved, then turned away and walked toward the bed. I looked behind me. No one was there. When I looked back at the mirror, he was lying down in my bed, wearing my body, and that night, for the first time, I was the one in the attic. He let me keep the light on for now. I don't know how long I've been in the attic. Time doesn't work the same up here. It drips, it hums, it folds around the corners like wet cloth. Sometimes I see flashes through the vent, the reflection in a spoon, a glimpse in the TV screen. Him, walking around in my body, cooking, laughing, stretching my skin like it finally fits right. He doesn't talk much anymore. He doesn't need to. Everyone thinks he's me. He goes to work, calls my friends, sleeps in my bed, smiles when people ask if he's feeling better. He's better than me now, more patient, more likable, more alive. But he made a mistake, a small one, a stupid one. He forgot about the mirror in the basement. The old one, the one with the crack in the top right corner. The one I used to check before job interviews, before dates. The one that only ever showed the truth. I saw it yesterday. He walked past it and didn't look, but I did. From the attic, and I saw myself still. There, still whole, still me, and I remembered something. He didn't take me. I gave myself to him. I remember the night, now, the scratching in the attic, the voice that came after the third drink, the whisper that said, "You don't have to be tired anymore." And I wasn't, not after I let him in. He promised he'd take the hard part, the pretending, the smiling, the weight of being me, and he did. But now I think he's tired too. Because last night, there was a new note in the attic, scrawled in jagged, desperate ink across the wood above me. I can't do it anymore. You win? And just like that, I woke up in the bed. The lights were off. The hatch was closed. My hands felt smaller than I. Remembered my skin fit again. But something felt wrong. I turned to the mirror and smiled. It was still his smile. First time poster here. I recently discovered this place, and reading through all the stories other users post has started to bring up old memories. My whole life I have had strange, sometimes frightening things happen around me, seemingly at random. Every event always feels so detached that I forget about it a few weeks later and keep living my life normally. Thanks to this subreddit, however, they have started to creep back into my mind and give me this uneasy feeling that something is looming around me. Call it paranoia, but I decided I might share some of the stories, and that through retelling them, I might be able to let them go in some way or form. That being said, I think I will start with telling a summer story from when I was still in high school and living with my parents. My parents owned a house in a fairly upscale neighborhood that was built on what were supposedly old Comanche Indian stomping grounds. Not sure if that is related in any way to this particular story, but old Indian sites seem to have a recurring theme of strange events in my life. I have a family of 5. My parents, 2 older brothers, and myself. My parents had a room on one side of the house, and my brothers and I were located on the other, with them upstairs directly above my room. We also had a bonus room located above the garage on my brother's and my side of the house. There was just a few random things like a couch and pool table up there. My brothers are close to 10 years older than me, so at the time of the story they didn't live with my parents and I effectively. This left me on one side of the house alone at night with a lot of empty rooms around me and a teenager's imagination. One weekend, my parents were going out of town, so they left me home alone in the big house and told me to look after things. I liked having the house to myself to watch movies and play games on the living room TV without worry of my mum griping on me about playing violent video games. I pretty much spent most of the day Saturday doing just this. Then some strange things started to happen. Late in the evening, I had gotten bored of the video games and was trying to come up with something else to do, when I heard the sound of pool balls being struck from upstairs. I'm quite certain it was the pool table because I remember thinking to myself, it sounded just like some was breaking for a new game. A little freaked out, it suddenly became aware to me how alone I was in this big house with the sun going down outside. I looked around the living room where I was and saw the shadows creeping up the wall and felt a really sinking feeling in my stomach that someone might be in the house, holding my breath. I started tiptoeing around the first floor, really scared someone might be in the house with me. I checked all the door locks and none were open. All windows were closed. I remember straining to hear anything and in return nothing but ringing in my ears. After I had checked the downstairs for open doors, my curiosity started to grab hold of me, so I grabbed the first thing I could find resembling a bat and started up the stairs to the room where the pool table was. The stairs leading up to the bonus room had a 90-degree turn in them with a stair light in an outlet to help you see at night. I was halfway up the steps before I realized my shadow had been illuminating into the room long before I was going to get there. Finally, I decided it was silly to walk so slow and with a bounce of courage. I took the last few steps and quickly flipped the lights on as I entered the room. Quiet. Everything was dead quiet. I let my eyes glance around, looking for anything out of place, and then I noticed the pool table. The balls were not askew like someone had been playing. They were actually racked neatly in a triangle with the cue ball on the other end of the table. At this point, I was pretty tired from all the sneaking about looking for something that wasn't there, that I decided I must have heard an owl killing some animal on our roof. This was a nightly occurrence. I ended up picking up a book to read and settling on the couch. When I read, I always turn on the radio or the TV in the background. For some reason, it helps me relax. I positioned myself on the couch that was in the bonus room with a big lamp behind me. The radio is this old thing from the 70s that even has a record player on it. It never breaks, so it hasn't ever been thrown out. In fact, I am pretty sure it's sitting in my closet right now. Just checked, it is still here. I can't recall what I was listening to, but as I was reading, I remember every once in a while something would just sound strange coming from the radio. One of those moments where you feel like you heard something, but you aren't sure if it was in your head or not. I kept reading, and then suddenly all the lights in the room went out. Sitting in the pitch-black room, the first thing that went through my head was power failure. I sighed and started trying to remember where a flashlight was. Then I noticed the radio still had a bright red light on top of it that lights up when it is powered on. It wasn't making any noise, which was weird because it was just playing before the lights went out. Now there was just a low, humming, static sound that came from the speaker. I was confused if the power was out or not, so I tried to flip the lamplight a few times. Nothing happened. Then fumbled over to the room light, which also didn't work. Then some very strange noises came from the radio. I don't really know how to describe them to this day, except to say it almost sounded like gurgling, but there were words I couldn't understand mixed in. Before I could totally process what I was hearing, it all culminated. The radio stopped the gurgling sounds and instead started a blood-curdling scream. I didn't stick around when that started. I was already by the door to the room, and I must have leaped down the entire flight of stairs in the dark, all I could think about was if my hairs were standing up on my neck 'cause something was behind me. I went straight for the front door of the house and outside. The entire neighborhood was pitch black from a power failure. I went straight to my car, got inside, locked the door, and turned it on. I sat there until I calmed down and then pulled to where the headlights were illuminating the front door. I had to psych myself up a little bit, but finally I walked up, closed the door, locked it, and walked away backwards in case the damn thing opened up behind me. I drove to a friend's for the rest of the weekend. When I tried to explain to my parents why I wasn't there, when they got home they just thought I was being silly and told me the next time there was a power failure to make sure the radio and TV were off if I was going to leave the house. They came home to music playing loudly from the bonus room. We moved into that house when I was 13 years old. The events I am about to describe happened 5 years later as a senior in high school. I still lose sleep when I think about this, even though it all occurred over a decade and a half ago. First, a brief overview of the lead up to these events, and I do mean brief. There were too many happenings in this house to totally recount. When we first moved into the house, it seemed like any other house. It was full of hopes and dreams, and I was quite content with my new bedroom. It wasn't very big, but it was my own room that I didn't have to share with my little brother. The drapes were an ungodly orange straight out of the Brady Bunch, but they blocked out the sunlight in the mornings, so I decided to keep them. It was my bedroom, after all, and I was going to decorate it however I wanted. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for the feeling of hopes and dreams to fade, and the feeling of always being watched started to creep in. It seemed the only place I was free from that feeling was when I was in my bedroom, and even then only when I closed the door. My brother would sleep with his door open, but that changed quickly as well. He would tell us about people standing in his doorway watching him in the middle of the night, not saying anything, not moving, only watching. He too began sleeping with his door closed and claimed he never saw anything like that again. As the years passed, more and more odd events occurred. First, it was phone calls. I was about 17 at the time. People started calling at all hours of the day and night, asking for the lady who had originally owned the house, but she had sold and moved on over 20 years prior to that. No matter how we responded, whoever it was on the other end of the line would beg and plead, saying that we must know where she was and that this was her last known address. Finally, after weeks of this, my dad answered one of these calls at 1 in the morning, and he very angrily told them that we didn't know who she was or where she was at, and to stop bothering us. That ended the phone calls, but not the strange activity around the house. Things began falling off of walls and shelves. That same year, the Christmas tree, which we had intentionally leaning toward the wall, fell over. After it fell twice, both during the early evening hours, I had the brilliant idea, or at least I thought, to anchor it to the wall with some wire we had laying round. I tied that tree to the wall on the left and right side, at 3 different levels, top, middle, and bottom. That very night, the tree fell over again, this time in the middle of the night. Then there was the dog. That damn little cocker, spring spaniel mix. My mum, in all of her infinite wisdom, thought she needed an inside-the-house dog. So she picked the most useless breed of dog there was. Or at least, in my opinion, they are useless. At first, I chalked it up to thinking the dog was stupid. It would grab one of its favorite toys, set it in an empty chair, and then sit there and stare. like it was waiting for somebody to throw it. After weeks of this, I am thinking this has to be the stupidest dog ever. This dog never gave up. Then it all started to change. It would still put the toys in the chair, but now its stare changed. You could tell it was looking at something that we couldn't see. The dog would growl and bark and almost lunge at the chair, like somebody was taunting it. The feeling of being watched in this house had never gone away, and in all reality, I felt like it had grown worse over the years. The unseen presence in the house had gotten heavier and heavier over the years, and now this dog was doing its best to make that feeling persist. After all of this, the strange watched feeling, the phone calls, things falling, the dog's behavior, and other things I'd rather not think about after all these years. Somehow, in all of my 18-year-old wisdom, I believed it was still a good idea to stay home alone. Well, that is, if you could call it alone. It was the spring semester of my senior year, and I had a economics paper due the next day. It wasn't a hard paper by any means. That was one of the easiest classes I had that year. But I knew it was going to take about 6 hours to write, especially once I properly notated and put together a bibliography. My brother had a baseball game that night in another town, and he was scheduled to pitch. So the parents went to watch an empty house. I might be able to knock an hour off that paper and get to bed early tonight. Or so I thought. As I sat at the computer with my back to the rest of the house, the feeling of being watched began to grow. Not like I was being watched closer, or that there were more people watching, but like there was something in the room with me. The feeling grew heavier and heavier, but I focused in on that paper, trying to get it finished so that I could retreat to my bedroom, where I had always found safe haven. Then it happened. As I was sitting there writing for school, all of a sudden, everything went black. It felt like I was wrapped up, something hugging me from behind, holding me in place. As soon as I could move, I jumped out of the chair and looked around. There was nobody there. I checked every room in the house. Nothing. Maybe I had fallen asleep, I told myself. I checked the last save time on the paper I was writing and compared it to the clock on the computer. Only 3 minutes had passed. Definitely hadn't fallen asleep, because it took at least 3 minutes to check the house. I didn't know what to do. I sure didn't want to stay by the computer. The heavy feeling never cleared. I didn't have a car yet. My dad and I were rebuilding a truck and hadn't quite finished. So I went to the only safe place in the house, my bedroom. I closed the door and laid there all night. I heard when everybody got home, but I didn't dare leave my room. They assumed I was asleep. I got up the next morning early, as my dad was also an early riser. I finished the paper, and life was seemingly back to normal. My brother still won't talk about that house. My dad happened to mention once in passing about the watched feeling. But when I asked him to explain what he meant, he quickly changed the subject. My mum, well, she's no longer here to speak about anything. But right up until the end, all she would do was mutter about the invisible person in the chair. I turned 18 in 2008, and on the day of my birthday, for reasons I won't bore you with, I packed up my things and moved out. For 4 years, I lived in my car, working as a barista from 6 to 2 and as a line, cook from 4 to 10. My plan was to work until I had enough money for my own place, and then to either go to college or get a more stable job. Looking back on it now, I don't know how I did it. But by 22, I'd saved up a decent sum of money and began my hunt for a semi-permanent place of residence. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and though housing prices weren't as bad as they are now, it was still a pricey county. After months of asking around, I was connected with Anders, an elderly man who was leasing a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in North Hollywood for far below market rate. The catch, because there's always a catch when it comes to affordable housing, was that the house had been terribly maintained. It had been unoccupied for a year and would need some serious TLC before most people could comfortably reside in it. I, however, had been living out of a car for 4 years. As long as the place had running water, it would be an upgrade for me. I moved into the house in fall 2012. Anders gave me a tour before I got settled. He was a short, joyful old man, well-meaning but, how do I put this? Maybe not the most focused as a result of his age. At one point during the tour, he showed me the bathroom, then the master bedroom, then the bathroom again, then the master bedroom again. He was about to walk into the bathroom for a 3rd time before I gently guided him down the hall. The house itself was livable but weathered. Dim lighting from outdated fixtures cast long shadows over peeling wallpaper. The ceiling in many of the rooms was discolored from past leaks. The faucet in the kitchen sink was broken, the bathtub was badly chipped, and a few of the cabinet handles fell off in my hand. It was a run-down place, located in a bars-and-the-window kind of neighborhood, but still, it was my place. I was smiling ear to ear when Anders gave me the keys. It's a good house with good bones. You take care of it, now, he instructed, which I found ironic. Before he left, he paused in the front doorway, drawing a hand to his chin as he looked behind me into the house. I tried to follow his gaze, but couldn't figure out what he was looking at. Everything all right? Yes, just that something looks different about that bathroom, though I can't put my finger on what. Well, it's a good house with good bones. You take care of it, now. And with that, he gave me a nod and left me to my unpacking. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed living in a house. I didn't care how run down the place was. Just having an accessible bathroom and a full-sized mattress to sleep on made me feel like a king. After I'd spent a few days cleaning the place up, I invited my sister and her fiancé over for dinner. I'm sure it sounds stupid, but my newly acquired ability to host company made me proud. In no time at all, I'd comfortably settled into my new home. That evening, after saying goodbye to my guests, I took a shower. The bathroom lacked a traditional, above-the-sink mirror. Instead, it had a wide, full-length mirror mounted on the wall to the left of the vanity. When I exited the shower and stepped up to the glass, raising a hand to wipe away the fog, I noticed something odd. In the condensation, right at my eye level, was the word "hi." I didn't know what to make of it. Somehow, the letters seemed intentional. It was hard to pass off as simply the way the steam had settled. My sister had been in the bathroom just before she left. Maybe she had written the word on the mirror with her fingertip, and the steam had only made the letters visible after my shower. I almost texted her about it, but the message seemed ridiculous when I typed it out. Paranoid, even. I wiped the mirror down and turned in for the night, and soon I forgot about it entirely. The following week, I received a promotion at one of my jobs, and while I was grateful for the additional income, my new position meant longer days. Additionally, I realized that a few of the house repairs were beyond my ability, and so I started outsourcing some work to contractors. It was annoying to only have the house to myself at night, but I didn't have another option with my busy schedule. Things were generally progressing smoothly, though every once in a while, in the middle of the night, I would be awoken by a sound that I couldn't quite place when I next noticed writing on my mirror. I had been living at the house for a month. The second sighting occurred in much the same way as the first. I came back home after work and took a shower. When I pushed back the shower curtain, I looked at the glass and saw, written in the condensation, the words, "Staying long." Now, I could pass 2 letters off as a coincidence, but 2 words, an entire question. That was no coincidence. Someone had been in my bathroom, and recently, I had contractors in and out of my house all the time, so one of them could have written the message, but why? I got dressed and put a hand on the bathroom doorknob, about to go back into my bedroom, when it occurred to me that whoever had written the message might still be around. I slowly cracked open the door, peering down the dark hallway in one direction, then the other. I listened very carefully, but heard nothing. I walked around my house, which didn't take long given its size, and looked for anything out of place. All of my doors were locked, all of my windows were shut, and none of my personal items had been disturbed. If someone had broken into my house, they were long gone by the time I looked around. That second message put me on edge for days. I triple-checked that my windows and doors were locked each night. I looked in every potential hiding spot, of which there were few in my little house, after I came home from work and before I went to sleep. And yet, though I was certain that my house was secure, I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. A month passed without incident. I had almost started to feel at home in my new lodgings again until, one Friday morning, I awoke just past 3 a.m. I couldn't immediately tell what had woken me. Often, the house settled at night, creaking and groaning in ways that made it sound alive. But in that moment, the house was silent. It was only after I turned my head to the side did I realize that my bedroom door, which I was certain I had shut, was wide open. I stared down the hallway, feeling as though I were gazing into a black hole. The darkness was abyssal. I kept waiting for my eyes to adjust, waiting for them to pick out the familiar shapes of my home, but they never did. I couldn't see a thing, so why did I feel like something could see me? Like there was something in the house with me, just feet beyond the threshold to my bedroom, watching, waiting, somehow. I found the courage to rise from my bed and walk toward the door. When I made it to the handle, I grabbed it and slammed the door shut. I didn't investigate further, didn't so much as stick my head out into the hall for a closer look. My bedroom door didn't have a lock. None of the doors except the bathroom did, so I dragged my bookcase in front of the door. It was a small bookcase, and an intruder could probably ram the door open anyway if they wanted to. But not before the sound alerted me. When morning came and I had to leave the house for work, I genuinely considered exiting my house through the window. I was almost late by the time I worked up the nerve myself to look around my house before I left. As always, I found nothing amiss. After work, when I reluctantly returned home for the night, I ate a quick dinner and hopped in the shower. I remember standing in the tub for a long time, mulling over my predicament. I'd heard horror stories about people secretly living in other people's homes. Maybe I had become a victim of a frog without even knowing, but if that was the case, then where the hell were they? There was nowhere to hide in that tiny house. I'd torn the place apart multiple times by then, checking every cabinet and closet. The inside of the house couldn't be accessed from the crawl space, and the air vents were too small for a person to fit in. Suddenly, I heard a click, so tiny that I'd almost missed it entirely. I tore back the shower curtain, gripping the shampoo bottle like I was about to bludgeon an intruder to death with it. As I'd come to expect, there was no one in the room, but there was a new message on the mirror. This one was bold, the easiest to read of any of the messages I'd received so far. It was 3 words long. I see you. Some awful amalgam of fear, confusion, and anger made my stomach churn. Ultimately, the latter emotion rose above the rest. I hastily dried off and threw on some clothes, then grabbed my phone from where I'd left it on the bathroom counter. I punched in Anders' number and glared at that damn mirror as I listened to the phone ring again and again. I'd started to think it was too late for him to be awake when he suddenly picked up. He started to ask me how I was faring in my new lodgings before I cut him off. I need you to tell me if there's some way that a person could be getting into the house, I said. Every night, I check every window and door. I check every cupboard, closet, and cabinet, and still things are amiss. You need to let me know if there's some entry point that I'm not aware of. Anders didn't seem to entirely understand what I was asking. What's getting in? You let me know if you're having rat troubles. My last tenant before you had rat trouble sometimes. Yeah, sure, I've got rats. Besides the doors and the windows, how could they be getting in? Well, there's the vents, of course. And there was a chimney once, though we had it sealed up a good long while ago. And there's also the crawl space, of course, though I'm sure you've already poked around down there. Though I knew the home had a crawl space, I'd never had much reason to investigate it. I was never able to find the entrance, even after ripping up all the carpeting in the house. Likely, hardwood had been installed over the access door, making it an unlikely point of entry for an intruder. How do I get down to the crawl space? Yes, you should give the crawl space a gander. I barely stopped myself from smashing the phone into the counter. I planned to. Where can I find the entrance? That'll be on the floor of the bathroom closet. I looked around the room. Surely I'd misheard him. Either that or he was confused again. What? I know it's an odd place for it, but it's only there because that room didn't always used to be a bathroom. The bathroom doesn't have a closet. Sure it does. Just to the left of the vanity. I looked at the mirror. At that long, oversized mirror. I'd always found it odd for a bathroom of that size to have a built-in floor-to-ceiling mirror. What was it that Anders had said when he'd first visited? That something had looked different about the bathroom. Setting my phone down next to the sink, I stepped up close to the glass. I spent a few moments feeling around the frame, looking for a latch. Then I grabbed a portion of the right side of the frame in 2 hands. After one hard yank, the mirror swung open like a door, revealing a large walk-in closet. Anders was saying something on the other end of the line, but I was too stunned to answer. There was a square-shaped hole at the back of the closet, which I assumed led down to the crawl space beneath the house. The closet floor was littered with all kinds of trash-filthy sheets, fast food containers, beer cans, and, I realized, some of my own items. Little things I thought I'd misplaced. A sock, a toothbrush, a comb, and a small, framed photograph of me, my sister, and our old family dog. I crouched down to pick up the photo, perched in the doorway as I studied my younger, smiling self. I heard Anders saying my name over the phone, except the voice didn't sound much like Anders at all. It was too deep, too clear, too close. When I looked up, a man was peeking out at me from the hole in the floor. He smiled at me, his eyes wide and pupils blown, his smile so wide it looked painful, and his hair long and matted. He was only visible from the neck up, and the harsh lighting made it look like a disembodied head was grinning at me from the back of the closet. Horrified, I rose to my feet and ran. I didn't stop running until I made it to my car. which I promptly drove to my sister's house. The next day, I drove to the police station to file a report. An officer met me at the house to check the scene, and I showed him the hidden closet, which indeed had an entrance to the crawl space. My best guess was that the intruder was entering my crawl space from the small door on the side of my house. He'd likely been squatting in the house during the year in which it sat unoccupied, and when he saw it was being prepared for sale, he had disguised the closet door so as to keep a little room for himself. Why he decided to stay or why he was leaving me messages, I can't say. From his actions, and from what little I saw of him, I think it's safe to assume that he wasn't of sound mind. Unfortunately, the man was never found. For all I know, he's still in that same neighborhood. Hell, he might even be in the same house. I moved across the county afterwards and have lived in studio apartments ever since. The thought of living in a big house with all those rooms and corners and places to hide gives me the creeps. It's not just houses that the incident soured for me, but mirrors as well. These days, when I visit a friend or stay at a hotel, I always have to carefully inspect the bathroom mirrors shining, a light directly into their faces and tapping a finger against the glass, because the worst detail of the whole ordeal was that, when revisiting the bathroom with the police officer, I stepped into the old closet, closed the door, and looked into the mirror. Instead of the mirror backing, I saw the officer's face on the other side of the glass. I was about 13 at the time, so that would mean this happened around 2009, I think. I'm bad at math. I was home alone one night when my parents went out somewhere. I think it was some work party or something. It involved alcohol, so they had to leave the car at home and take a taxi. I usually enjoyed being home alone at night. Mum would leave pizza money and I could play Xbox all night. It was Halloween break, so I didn't have any school to worry about. The good old days. I remember being in a bit of zombie phase because I spent most nights playing Left 4 Dead and COD 5 Zombies with my friends. Man, I'm telling you. Pizza, snacks, a case of Dr. Pepper, and gaming with the boys. Heaven. Well, something happened on one of these nights that messed me up pretty bad, to the point that even now, I always double-check doors and windows. I never wear both cans of a pair of headphones at once, and I am still petrified of the dark. That one ruined a few relationships. I was playing Xbox as usual all night, and I was already a bit jumpy. I was playing alone that night, so I wasn't talking to anyone. I was playing Left 4 Dead, and the music and sounds of the witch used to scare me a little. I was 13, shut up, so every dark corner and noise I heard was already freaky. I had my window open a bit, and I heard what sounded like someone walking up my gravel driveway. I thought it was my parents coming home, but when I looked outside I couldn't see anyone. I remember just sitting in silence for a while with my game paused, trying to listen out for other sounds, but I didn't hear anything. It was only a few minutes later I heard the trash cans in my backyard falling over. I nearly jumped out of my skin. We didn't really get raccoons or anything, so I started to panic a bit. I looked out the window in the hallway out into my backyard. I couldn't see anything. The trash cans did fall over, but I didn't see raccoons, and it wasn't windy. It was raining a little, but that was it. I couldn't see the back door as the window looked down above the porch, and the porch roof blocked my view. There was definitely something happening. I went and stood at the top of my stairs and just stared into the darkness for I don't know how long, hoping that I didn't hear anything. All I could hear was the pitter-patter of the rain and my heartbeat in my ears. As I went to go back to my room, I heard it. Someone was trying the handle of the back door. I slowly made my way down my stairs and peeked around the corner and into the kitchen. The back door was wide open. My blood ran cold and every hair stood on end. I knew I had to call the police, but the phone was on the wall next to the fridge. In the kitchen, in what was one of the stupidest decisions of my life, I started walking towards the kitchen. It felt like my hallway was 1,000,000 miles long. My mind was racing with possibilities of what was waiting for me. Was someone gonna grab me? Were they gonna just stab me or shoot me or something? Every single scenario played out in my head. In each one, I end up dead or worse. I finally made it to the kitchen. I tiptoed over to the phone. I lifted it and dialed 911. And that's when I heard it. "Aren't you supposed to be in bed, son?" A voice echoing from the back of the kitchen near the window. A low and gravelly voice. I threw down the phone and ran. I could hear the man running after me. I ran faster than I ever had towards my front door. As I got to it, it flung open. It was my parents. I ran into my dad's arms and managed to get out through the tears and panic that someone was in the kitchen. As I looked back towards the kitchen, the man went running through the back door again, and my dad ran after him. My dad came back a minute later and told my mum to call the cops. The cops asked me about what happened, but I couldn't give them a description as I couldn't see him in the darkness. They asked my dad where the guy ran off to, but my dad said that he jumped the fence and ran off into the trees. They never caught him. I've since moved into my own place and fitted every door and window with good quality locks. But while I still lived in my parents' house, every time I looked into those trees, I always felt like someone was watching me. It happened a few years ago when I was 15, a sophomore in high school. It seemed like just another November, Friday night, in my quiet home in Ohio. I live on the border of the country area, with a thick forest and, further on, a field across from my house. I should probably note that I only had a few houses surrounding me. Not really many of my friends lived where I was. There was the old couple to my left. They usually have family over on the weekends, but tonight it was quiet and calm over there. To my right, there was a middle-aged couple. They were gone that night as they routinely work night shifts at wherever they work. Finally across and far down to the left of my house was another nice couple who have a very sweet 4-year-old who always loves to come over and be with me and my 9-year-old brother. My parents decided to go out and be together for the night. Whenever they do this, they are usually out pretty late into the morning, and my brother was sleeping over a friend's house. I was tired that night, so I decided to stay home and enjoy a relaxing night at home while the snow began to fall throughout the night. It was mostly uneventful that evening. Some television early on, and then some Xbox till later on. I remember eating some rice and chicken that night, but it would be important to note also that I neither drank or did any drugs that night, so I knew what to come was real. The clock just struck 11 p.m., only a few minutes back, and I was well into a fun match of Halo when I got the feeling something was just wrong. I brushed it off as just me being alone and getting those weird feelings one gets sometimes when alone. Then just as it began to slip my mind, I heard it smack. Smack fear gripped me for moments as I realized that sound was neither from me or my TV. It was much louder and clearer than anything that could have come from the TV. I turned white as I realized it came from the window right above the couch, and me. I turned around in haste and lifted the blinds to see no one. Nothing out of sorts. The snow was falling and everything looked disturbingly normal. Oh, I thought to myself, probably just rocks carried by the wind, or maybe snow or ice from the roof that fell. Despite this selfish, I was still gripped with this feeling that something was just wrong and that whatever hit that window was no accident of nature. I then decided to quench my nerves by going into the office and playing games or watching porn on the computer. Just something to get my mind off of that. For about 30 minutes it worked. I thought to myself, I'm just being silly and I should enjoy this quality time home by myself. About 34 to 38 minutes after my first occurrence, there came a hump from the window to my right in the office. I wanted to throw up. I knew then that this was no coincidence, and that this was not of the weather or an animal. It was too consistent, too intentional. I immediately ran from my seat to the kitchen, where I grabbed the family flashlight and a large knife. One for investigation and one for defense, if what to come was as bad as my gut was telling me. I ran back down and shined the flashlight out the window into the yard and the forest. I saw nothing, except what I thought were light footprints from the window to the forest in the traced snow on the ground. My mind raced from what this could be to what could happen. I had never been embraced by this much fear in my life. I called my mom, hoping she would answer. Once I was able to reach her, I told her the events of the night, and she then said, in a hopeful yet dead serious tone, locked the doors. If it happens again, call the cops. Be safe. My parents were about an hour and a half away, and they offered to come home, but I refused, trying to be considerate of not ruining their evening together. I went to each door and locked them, to each window and locked them up to my room with a phone, a knife and a flashlight. I still rejected that this could be real, so I put on some music from my phone and put my earbuds in, hoping to fall asleep and wake up, realizing this was just a nightmare or a bad case of my head messing with me. I was listening to Queen and on the verge of sleep when I thought I heard something in the completely quiet house. I took my earbuds off to hear AWHACK whack, WHACK. With each beat my heart sunk more and more. After a few moments it stopped, but I was too afraid to move from my bed, and I called my parents. Within about 45 minutes, my parents came home without further incident. By this time, it was about 3 a.m. I recalled as much as I could and showed them everything. Us three searched the outside of the house, with my dad holding his handgun in case we did find anything. Again 7. Nothing was found, except for deep footprints in the several-inch deep snow now that circled the house several times, stopping in front of the windows and the side door, which upon inspection was beat and crushed in the center, with what seemed like a big hammer or blunt object. We waited in the house until morning, until my dad decided to go outside, to the forest to see where the tracks led. When he came back, we learned that the tracks led to a small shelter that housed several photographs of our house and a small sledgehammer with pieces of wood stuck on it, with tracks leading to a road far across the field. I never stayed in the house alone at night for several years after this.